Hi there, welcome to our latest edition of my 10-minute moan, where we find out what Nigel Farage and his party think of men who are trans women and what should happen to them when they go to jail. Here's a little taster even, of what's coming up in this 10-minute
Should trans women be automatically removed from all women's prisons all the time?
No, I don't think they should. What I do think is that each should be risk assessed on an individual basis. Look, I'm not an expert on trans people. All that I know is that everybody should be treated with humanity and decency.
Well, when it comes to trans women in prisons, isn't it interesting that we run our country with people who become ministers, who generally have absolutely no idea of the subject matter that they're talking about. I've personally never worked in a prison, so I can't answer it, but I think you'll find that the answer that you'll get from somebody who has worked in prisons at the highest possible level is, I think basically it's about risk assessment, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we all know what the law is. I'm not going to go back over that yet again. But to my mind, everybody who is in prison deserves to be treated with humanity and decency. And that includes female prisoners and it includes trans prisoners.
So that's what's coming up. And I've also got some new revelations about what Vanessa Frake, who's the new Justice Advisor for Reform, believes about other trans issues. I'll come to that at the end because that information just came to me, but I'll cover that. So the first thing I want to cover, today Reform had a big announcement. They were launching, showing the public for the first time their new Justice Advisor, who used to work at as a prison, what was his job title she gave the governor? Right? And before the press conference, there was an interview with her which went out where she gave away some of the indications, her feelings on trans prisoners. That is men who identify as women going into female prisons. So here's the first interview that she gave today. Let me know in the comments what you think of this.
Should trans women be automatically removed from all women's prisons all the time?
No, I don't think they should. What I do think is that each should be risk assessed on an individual basis. I think it depends on a lot of factors. And the prison service is, my life was spent doing risk assessments. And, I think based on that risk assessment depends on where that person should go.
But the Supreme Court might actually check, the ruling by the Supreme Court might say, actually, what all prisons have to be. No one who's not biologically female should be in a women's prison.
Well, they may well do that, but I could imagine that there will be several prisoners who will probably have their solicitors on that and challenge that ruling. Look, I'm not an expert on trans people. All that I know is that everybody should be treated with humanity and decency.
So that was a bit of a car crash. In the middle of that interview, the interviewer basically said, does that not really contradict the court ruling on men are men and women are women, in which it was all that sort of nonsense. Trying to find a bit of a gap to come out with something that our party wouldn't fall out there for and say anything that was illegal. But the biggest thing takeaway from that interview is where she's asked right at the start, should men, in fact, I'll just play the start bit for you again, just to clarify, because this is the worst bit of this interview,
should
right?
Trans women be should trans women be automatically removed from all women's prisons all the time?
No, I don't think they should. What I do think is...
No, I don't think they should, right? So what she's saying is, no, men should not automatically be barred out of female prisons. And that's bonkers. And I kind of don't think they know how the public feel about this, because this is a very, very big subject. And I'll cover how bad a thing this could be once I show you the second interview, and then I'll cover the stuff that's came out just before I recorded this about her feelings on other trans issues. So that interview was put out, and then we went to a press conference where she was introduced to the public and the press as the new Reform Justice Advisor. And this happened where Nigel Farage gives his feelings on it right at the start and then asks for her opinion to back up his opinion. And this is frightening because this isn't just somebody who can say, she didn't really mean that. This is Nigel Farage basically doubling down on what his new Justice Advisor has just told the public just before this press conference.
Should trans women be automatically removed from all women's prisons all the time?
Well, when it comes to trans women in prisons, isn't it interesting that we run our country with people who become ministers, who generally have absolutely no idea of the subject matter that they're talking about? I've personally never worked in a prison, so I can't answer it, but I think you'll find that the answer that you'll get from somebody who has worked in prisons at the highest possible level is, I think basically it's about risk assessment, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we all know what the law is. I'm not going to go back over that yet again. But to my mind, everybody who is in prison deserves to be treated with humanity and decency. And that includes female prisoners and it includes trans prisoners. You know, everything in the prison service is risk assessed. And I am sure that the prison service will tie itself up in knots over the trans issue, just like many other public sectors have. And as Nigel said earlier, you know, we are at the beginning, and that is something that we will need to speak about clearly.
Yeah, but in terms of the problems in prisons, it's a relatively small one.
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Tenny Diver, Telegraph.
So, what did we hear in that interview? Well, we heard Nigel, first of all, saying that if men should be in women's prisons, it should just be down to risk assessment. Well, no, Nigel, it shouldn't. It should be down to law. You know, that law that the Supreme Court made quite simple, that men are men and women are women, and women should have safe spaces. That's quite fundamental, this whole argument, right? And then the Vanessa woman, she's went on to say that everybody deserves respect and decency in prisons, and that includes trans women who are men, right? This is quite a shift to the left for a party that we all thought 18 months ago were the furthest right and possibly the best right party we could ever hope for. And day by day, week by week, month by month, we see them shifting to the left. And if this isn't a shift to the left, I don't know what is. But this is the thing. I don't know why parliamentarians miss the public opinion on this so much. And if you ever need any gauge on how damning this could be a political party, then look no further than the SNP in Scotland. Because this is quite substantial, as in what got rid of Nicola Sturgeon as First Minister. Well, that and her imminent arrest, I suppose. But we then seen Humza Yousaf, whose coalition government with the Greens was split over a trans issue, where the Scottish Greens, were about to have an implosion internally, which led them to fall out with SNP, which saw Humza Yousaf stand down as First Minister. This is the effect of the trans question and trans issues. And I genuinely think Nigel and his party have really blown up over this. And I've spoke to a lot of people. I went off Reform July last year, and I'll not bore you to death about the whole story, but they put up separatists as candidates in the general election in Scotland. And for a unionist party, that's kind of no with me. So that was it. Time is up for me. And as I said to somebody earlier on in the next space, trust is like my virginity. You can only take it once, right? Once it's gone, it's gone. So, but there's a lot of people sort of catching up month after month with things that Reform do. And I genuinely believe, and I've spoke to people numerous times, oh, that Nigel said this and he's not done this about deportation. That'll be it. Folk will have had enough and there'll be people who fall out with them in their droves. And it kind of hasn't happened, because I've said, no, I kind of don't think it is, because a lot of this Reform support is almost cult-like. But I actually believe this could be the one out of me saying no to loads of them that have happened over the last few months, that this could be the one item that loses them a tremendous amount of support and votes, which at the end of the day, that political parties, it's nice to have big membership, but it's kind of votes that count. So you could have no members and get enough votes to get people elected. So that's the most important thing. And I can see those who would support them and potentially vote for them not doing so on this one thing, on this one afternoon of madness. And that's pretty damning for them. Now, the other thing I want to talk to you about, as I said at the start of the video, was just before I came online, I was in an X space with Basil, who comes on to the lives that I do often. And he flagged up something that it's been uncovered, that this Vanessa, the new justice advisor for reform, has the exact same feelings about safe spaces in hospitals, etc. Where she believes that trans people should be allowed access under certain circumstances. Again, contradictory to the Supreme Court ruling. And not because the Supreme Court ruling, if you remember, came about because of an issue in a health board in Scotland with safe spaces for women. That's how this whole thing came about, and they were challenged. So she's contradicting, again, as the justice advisor for the Reform Party. And quite why she seems to be encroaching onto health matters seems completely bizarre to me. She'd be better keeping her mouth shut. But to be fair, I think her comments and opinions on what should happen in hospitals with trans people came out before she got made the justice advisor for reform. However, it's a shambles. And I can't think of many people other than the most cultish of the cult that can say after this moment, he didn't really mean that. We don't really mean that. We just had to say that. You know the sort of tripe that you hear every time Reform do something stupid? Anybody want to defend that? From this moment forth, I'm kind of taking a pinch of salt. So, if you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, stick your comments below and hit the share button. If you've not already done so, please consider subscribing to the channel. But most importantly of all, unless you're the type of person that's going to defend this, when we see this party that should have been, and maybe probably and possibly could still be, the great hope for those right of centre in politics, then know you. But everyone else, have a great day. Cheery bye now.